My presentation topic is how feedback turns struggle into growth. So, have you ever had that moment in class when you just know your students are lost? You are explaining something, maybe you have said it 3 times or 4 times, and still those blank stares, the quiet scribbles, and the polite notes. Now, what do you do at that moment? Do you power through, hoping they will catch up later, or do you just pause and check in? That one pause, that single moment of curiosity, is what we call formative assessment. So, it's not a formal test or not a red pen on paper. It's that human moment of connection where learning really happens. As an education researcher, Dylan Williams said, teachers need to know not what students have learned, but what they are learning right now. And that idea completely changed the way I teach. So I want to share a story with you. And the story is about the essay writing lesson. So, one ordinary day that taught me an extraordinary lesson. I was teaching essay writing to a group of teenagers. So we are working on introductions, body paragraph, and conclusions all the way. So everyone nodded during my explanation, so I thought perfect, they get it. 10 minutes later, I walked around the room. Some students were flying and writing confidently, but others had written barely a line. A few were staring at the page like it was a wall they couldn't climb. So in that moment, I remembered reading Hattie and Temperley's research about the power of feedback. They said effective feedback helps students answer 3 key questions. And these 3 questions are where am I going, how am I going, and what's next. So I decided to try something different. I said, everyone pause, swipe your papers and the paragraphs so other person can read what you have written. Read it and write one positive comment and one suggestion. So at first they looked surprised, maybe even nervous, but within a minute the room was buzzing, students leaned in, reading, whispering and smiling. Some realized their peers had great ideas, others found comfort knowing that they were not alone in their confusion. Then we shared as a class. I said, here are few things I noticed. Weak topic sentences, vague arguments. So let's fix them together. We talked, we laughed, and then I told them to rewrite. And what happened next amazed me. The essays weren't perfect, but they were alive. Students took ownership and they were proud. That day, I realized something powerful, that assessment is not just about judgment, it's about growth. Why formative assessment worked? So, formative assessment might sound simple, but it's deeply effective. John Hattie's meta-analysis found that feedback, and the feedback is when used well, has one of the highest impact on learning with an effect size of 0.73. That's nearly doubling the rate of progress. And OECD calls formative assessment one of the most effective strategies for improving equality and motivation because it gives every learner a voice, not just the top performers. So just think about this way. Summative assessment is like taking a photo. It shows where you were at a single moment. And formative assessment is like a video. It captures growth, progress, and changes. It tells us how learning happens, not just what was learned. And for students, that makes all the differences. So now I want to share a story number 2, and it's about a silent student. So a few years ago, I had a student and his name is Leo. He was quiet, polite, always at the back of the class. Never caused trouble though, but he never spoke up either. His grades were average. I used to think he just didn't care. So one day I gave him a short quiz, not to grade, just to check understanding. When I looked at his paper, I noticed something. He had written all the steps perfectly, but in the margins, he had written tiny questions like, why does this rule work and could I explain it another way? That day, I called him over and I said, Leo, your questions are brilliant. I would love for you to share one with the class. He froze, but then he read it out. And suddenly the class leaned in. His questions sparked a discussion that lasted 10 minutes. So it reminded me of Blackett-Williams' idea that formative assessment is not just about testing, it's about activating students as owners of their own learning. So from that day on, Leo participated more, not because I gave him a grade, but because I gave him a voice. That's the true gift of formative assessment. It makes every student feel seen. Now I want to talk about formative assessment in practice around the world. Around the world, teachers are rethinking what assessment means. If I want to talk about New Zealand at first, then I can say assessment of learning approach encourages students to co-create success criteria. It's not just teacher knows best, it's what we learn together. In Finland, teachers use ongoing feedback instead of traditional exams in early years. It builds confidence rather than fear. And lastly, in Bangladesh, like my home country, Rahman and Sharkar found that peer and self-assessment methods increased confidence among students in low-resource schools. Prove that formative assessment works even without expensive technology. So, different countries, different classroom, but one truth. When students understand the why of learning, not just the what, they flourish. So, breaking myths and shifting mindsets. Now, let's bust a myth. Formative assessment is not just about adding more tests or paperwork. It's just about mindset. It's about asking small, powerful questions. And these questions can be, what did you find hardest today? Can you show me how you got the answer? And if you had another try, what would you go differently? So these tiny moments build self-awareness. And as Carol Duke reminds us, when students believe they can improve, they develop a growth mindset. Formative assessment is what turns that belief into reality. So, my final reflection is, what happens when we teach this way? When we make assessment a dialogue, not a judgment? Students stop fearing mistakes. They start embracing them. And they move from passive receivers to active learners. And we as teachers move from being judged to being coaches. As OECD said beautifully, assessment for learning is not an event, it's a culture. A culture where students feel safe to say, I don't understand yet, because that little word yet is the seed of learning. So, next time when we are teaching and sense confusion in the room, we should not rush on. We should pause, we should ask and listen. Because that 1 minute of feedback can be worth more than 10 hours of grading. Formative assessment transforms education from judgment into a new hope. It says to every learner, you are not finished, you are actually growing, and it builds confidence. And maybe that's the most powerful message we can give to our students. Thank you.